Hello, I'm Mark DiCarlo, and of course, this is Voices of the Coastal Bend. My guest tonight is Mark A. Gonzalez, another Mark A. for Nueces County District Attorney. And the Mark A, is that, did you tell me that's Mark Anthony also?
Yep, every Mark I know is Anthony.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm an older generation than you, but I don't remember any Mark Anthonys from my generation, but you say it's common now, huh?
It's very common. I know at least 5 or 6 of them.
Well, as I said to you, where's all the Michelangelos? I don't see any Michelangelos. I see a lot of Mark Anthonys, but maybe our parents had great plans for us or whatever. All right, one of the cards that you give, you're running for a district attorney of Nueces County, correct?
That's
based in the
correct.
Corpus Christi, Robstown area. And why are you running for district attorney?
There's a lot of reasons, and I don't know how long this show is, but we can definitely talk
Go ahead
until
and give us a few minutes.
I've been practicing as a criminal defense attorney in town since '06, and recently, the things that I've seen in the courthouse is just. It's just something that I feel needs to be changed, and if I'm not the guy who does it, I just want change in the office, and so I figured if I can gripe about it or I could do something about it, so I decided to run.
The topical issues are two that I've heard of, and I asked Mr. Skirk about one of them, or both of them, but the one that's not getting as much publicity right now is that the prosecutors don't have enough discretion in deciding the plea bargains that are offered, and that Mark Skirk is micromanaging the district attorney's office. Have you heard that complaint?
I wouldn't say that's a complaint. I'd say that's a fact. I'm there every single day. Every single day I'm wearing a suit and I'm in there fighting for people accused. And a lot of times you have these prosecutors and the excuse is, well, they're not seasoned enough, or they haven't had enough trial experience, or we need to make sure they're doing the right thing. Then you have guys who have been there 10 years, 15 years, like, some of the senior prosecutors, and their hands are still tied. So it's like, so what is it? You don't have the proper training, or what's going on?
Well, Mark Skirka said, well, I had it confirmed from an older prosecutor, inside gossip. He said yes. He or she said yes, their hands are tied. Mark Skirka denies it, and he says it would be impossible for him to micromanage all those hundreds and hundreds of cases that go through there. But I think what's legitimate there is that they're given certain parameters regarding, if this person has a prior, et cetera, and based upon the crime. I think that's what's going on, but I'm not certain.
But, and also I think it's the fact that they have something written on a file, right? But you have a prosecutor in the courtroom who's talked to the witnesses, who just doesn't see a police report. They've talked to a witness who says, you know what, this guy's not believable, or this is going to be a hard case to prove. And then they tell their supervisors that, and their supervisor says, well, we can't dismiss it, or don't work something out that's going to be beneficial where the case goes away. So that's why their discretion is being hindered all the time, even if the supervisors don't know those things, So, that's one of the main things. I think the micromanaging is something that's probably one of the biggest problems. Every defense attorney in town, and even the prosecutors themselves will tell you, I can't do my job because they're not letting me. It doesn't matter their experience, whether they're brand new or they've been there for years.
A related issue that's getting a lot of publicity is what's called the Michael Morton Act, which I discussed with the district attorney of Jim Wells County right before we taping this show. And the Michael Morton Act, of course, is the law in the state of Texas wherein the prosecutor has to turn in basically all evidence. I don't even believe it needs to be relevant evidence or exculpatory evidence, all evidence to the defense attorney, in order that no kind of abominations or misjustices occur as they did with Michael Morton. So there's allegations that the DA's office in Nueces County is not revealing all the evidence. Is that a problem?
And I'd say it's not just allegations. It's a fact. You had a judge in the district, 28th District Court, Judge Hassett, who had a hearing. Most people don't know that. She had a 5-day hearing and got all the facts out, got Mr. Skirka to testify on the stand that this is what happened. He knew that there was evidence that the expert, the medical examiner, said that it was a contact wound and then changed his testimony. And he said, Well, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything. Michael Morton explicitly states that if it exists, you turn it over. That's the scariest part about Mr. Skirka. He doesn't comprehend that if it exists, I have to turn it over. He thinks, well, if it exists and it can't help them out, well, then we don't got to give it to him. That's completely wrong, and that's scary.
Well, I heard Carlos Valdez in one of these related political cases over there in Clayburgh County involving the DA over there. Mr. Hubert made a kind of an interesting assessment. He said the prosecutor's always going to say it's not exculpatory evidence, and it's more up to the defense attorney to say what's exculpatory. I would say this in defense of Mr. Skirka, just in discussion. He's been practicing a long time before that, because I tried some cases against major cases when we were young and all that. He's been trying a long time before that Michael Morton Act came through, which mandated that he gives over all the evidence. So maybe he's having a hard time adjusting. I don't know.
That may be one of the problems or the trends. He's been there so long, and that's why I honestly feel it's time for a change. The country's evolving, and not only Michael Morton, other counties are starting to be progressive. You got Harris County. They're not even arresting individuals for marijuana anymore. Non-arrest citations now on marijuana. You got Bexar County, Nico LaHood. He has a civil rights division, just how CCPD or any law enforcement agency, what do they have? Internal affairs, right? We've all heard of that, right? You got people who police the officers.
Right.
Well, over there in Bexar County, they kind of made a division where attorneys are independently looking at cases that may have had some questions, and their division actually goes and looks to make sure everything was done properly, because you don't want Michael Morton to ever happen again, where someone goes away for how many years for a crime he didn't do.
I'm going to tell you something, though, that I mentioned before, and I'm really sticking my head on a chopping block by saying this. And I mentioned it on Facebook. Everyone blames the fact that the hiding of evidence regarding these unwarranted convictions, and there's been a bunch proven through DNA testing in the state of Texas, right? But nobody blames the courts of appeals that rubber stamps everything the judges do, the prosecutors do. They say that it's harmless error. They say you didn't preserve your objection. They say, right, it's judicial discretion. So basically, they rubber stamp everything they do, and then they say, oh, well, how could this abomination of justice had? Well, when the Court of Appeals is refusing to review the cases, that's what you're going to have.
No, exactly.
So I don't think it's just not an issue regarding Michael Morton and evidence. It's also regarding whether or not we actually have an active Court of Appeals, an honest one. Because I'm sure you've read these decisions wherein it's like reading a double talk manual, right? I mean, half of it doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, I was reading up a little bit, because I'm not I do this show, but I'm not maybe as active politically as I should be. For example, in some of these the higher profile cases, I figure I got my own cases to worry about. But I do notice, I think that the case that you were talking about in Judge Hassett's court was this Courtney Hayden case, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that was, and as you were stating, had to do with what the medical examiner's testimony or original testimony, right?
Yeah, so the medical examiner is Dr. Shakur, and there was some evidence that came out that he had been fired from or made to resign his position when he worked in Mississippi for messing something up, for, I guess, saying something he shouldn't have said. Mm-hmm. And then so it comes back, it comes out in this trial, so the DA's like, well, now we need to give you this about Dr. Shakur. And then, so that's another piece of this information. I don't believe the DA office knew about that, but those are things that this expert that the state was relying on changed his testimony.
Well, I got to tell you that, and this is an opinion, which I've probably given too many. I give too many opinions when I'm another attorney on, but I mean, isn't that typical wherein they'll hire an outsider, who somehow has a wink and a nod that he's going to okay whatever goes on in this county. How many kids get out of medical school that they could hire? But no, they always hire somebody, from a school superintendent from Dallas to bring him in or something. And it's suspicious,
And that's what came out in this trial. I mean, that's the thing. Most of the public didn't get to hear all the details. And if you sat in that courtroom, you heard that Mr. Skirka knew about the information, and he said, don't turn it over. And this doctor actually told the DA in this case, I will sing or say whatever I need to say for whoever I'm testifying. I mean, he said that. This was in court. You can get the
I
transcripts.
know, and you know what? I will tell you this: corruption in medical examiners' offices is not it's not unknown in other areas. For some reason, I don't know if it's some sort of a political position and they'll change testimony, and they are gotten to quite often. I think I don't think it's an uncommon problem. It could work in your favor too, though.
Well, I think it only causes for every time that medical examiner gave his expert testimony and someone relied on it. I mean, that's going to be in question now, you know. So I mean, where does it stop or where does it start?
So it's interesting issue. Then what you're inferring is that maybe anybody who is convicted, especially of a murder, or a major or murder or capital murder, that he testified at trial. I guess if you're filing a motion for new trial or one of the sophisticated federal writs that I sometimes do, I can't 28 whatever it is, USC 1131 or something. You say, hey, look, he basically admitted that he's lied and try to get your new trial or whatever.
Exactly, and they didn't disclose that, and maybe they might have not known, but now that's come to light. They're relying on these people.
But there are. I will tell you this. On the obviously this, on the major murder cases and all this. There is so much evidence, and where evidence begins and ends might be a judgment call, because you could have easily hundreds and hundreds of pages just in medical records, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so on, wherein all this has to be turned over. I mean, it could be you don't think it could be a daunting task for the prosecutor? As a matter of fact, Carlos Omar Garcia, the DA in Jim Wells was just on. He says he actually numbers. They call it bait stamping. You probably heard that phrase. They actually bait stamp all the documents now and introduce them to prove that they produce them to the other side.
Right. I practice in Jim Wells all the time, and it's not only a responsibility. I mean, a task. To give all that information.
Yes.
But it's the state's responsibility. And once you take on that responsibility, there would be no question. If it exists, even more so. If it exists, I need to give it to you because I know I have that responsibility. So you need to come up with whatever system, especially if the state has all the resources. They got a budget. I think this district attorney has 45 attorneys. He still thinks that's not enough. And their budget is $4.5 million for the district attorney's office. So if they need to have someone to say, you know what, we need to give them all these things and do a bait stamp or come up with some kind of software. They have the resources, and they say they don't. How much more money do they need to make it work?
Well, I don't know the budget, and I haven't reviewed the budget. And I don't want to fly by the seat of my pants and say that I know that they have all the resources. I do know, I think that those district attorneys here in Nueces County, those assistants, those kids out of law school, not being disparaging, young people, whatever,
right,
out of law school, they're not paid enough money, are they?
I would agree with you. Nueces County is one of the lower in the states as to starting out district attorney salaries. I mean, you go one county to Jim Wells, they're getting $30,000 more.
Yeah, there's well qualified. We were talking about a specific prosecutor that they're from Nueces County,
and
they go to Jim Wells or they go to San Patricio County.
There's two that are in Jim Wells that live here in Corpus.
I know. And I know them in other counties as well. And they live here, and they'll go an hour because they make so much more money in some of these smaller counties.
And I think, though, that just making so much more money isn't the only thing why people probably leave. I mean, this past year is the highest turnover rate for this county. I think 22 attorneys left. All right, I don't think it all had to deal with money. It was some of the other issues like their hands being tied. They didn't have any kind of, any say in what they did with their caseload, and they didn't feel like they had a say. So why are they going to want to work? Or maybe they didn't feel inspired, or there could be tons of reasons. I mean, I know I used to work for a guy when I first started out, in construction. I didn't get paid anything, but the fact that I was learning, the fact that I was creating and building something, I worked for that guy probably when I didn't even have to or need to anymore. But I did it because I felt I owed him something for teaching me all those things, and I don't think that's what they're getting there. Those young kids or the newer lawyers, So I think there's a lot of issues as to why they're leaving, and it just doesn't have to deal with the money.
Well, the money is pretty low, though. I mean, for
I
me to
agree.
say that, because I agree with you fundamentally. If somebody's, if they need to learn, they need to learn. And obviously, it's just not a money reward. But I mean, they are underpaid, and I don't know if
I agree.
it's ridiculous.
I agree. But
I mean, why would you want to? Why would you want? I mean, the stress and this is dealing with the people. Why would you want to do it?
So then why have 45 lawyers? Let's work with something and maybe scale it down to 30, right? And then we make all those salaries can be distributed across the board. And if we make the courts more efficient, because see, they say, oh, there's too many cases. Well, of course there's too many cases if all you're bringing in is every kind of case. So let's just throw everything and let's see what sticks. But by the time it sticks, you've wasted all your resources, you've wasted all the attorneys, and you're wasting the court's time. And then cases get dismissed, they get found not guilty all the time. So it starts in the front end, I think, where you can address these problems, get rid of some of the workforce.
Well, finding not guilty is an interesting issue because, it's kind of the same way on the civil side. I worked for an insurance defense firm for a little time. They'd come back in and go, zeroed them out, zeroed them out, zeroed them out. Well, you're the one that decided which case you're going to try.
Exactly.
So if you zeroed them out like it's a great victory. Well, you settled the bad ones. So
Right.
what I'm saying, you settled the bad ones, but maybe the DA's office in a way maybe that means they're trying the marginal cases, and so maybe you should be trying marginal cases. But I think what you're saying is maybe they're trying too many marginal cases.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
Tons. I mean, if you look at the results, I mean, I'm in there every week. Last year, I tried 27 jury trials, all right? Me and my associate, Matt Manning, we tried 27. I don't know if maybe 3 we got guilties on. These are felonies. A murder. Last January, we had a murder. Not guilty on a murder, and she was convicted of manslaughter. And that's what we asked for. We said, look, this is not a murder. This is a manslaughter.
Right.
Let's give them probation. No. Let's try. The family is on board. The victim's family is on board. No. So what do? Waste 100 people come in for jury selection. Waste that taxpayers' money. Had a week and a half trial, and what happens? Exactly what I told them was going to happen. Not guilty on a murder and manslaughter. She gets probation. Those are the types of things that, I could see if you have a victim who's saying, I want justice for my son, and I understand that. Those are sometimes you have to go forward. But when you have the victim's family and everyone involved except the state saying no, there's something wrong there.
Sorry about that, but somebody
No problem.
interrupted us for a second here. Well, you brought up an interesting point about the victims that I've never really discussed too much. The prosecutor is oftentimes, his hands are tied by the victim. How many times have I been in criminal courts and they say, I have to contact the victim, and the victim isn't on board. The victim wants time in prison. And there's this, I should sit down and research a little bit more regarding that whole Victims' Rights Act that came out, whenever it was, 15, 20 years ago, because a lot of times prosecutors are not offering good plea bargains because they say the victim is not on board with it.
And I think as a prosecutor, you need to kind of speak to that victim and let them know what's realistic, okay? And you say, because a prosecutor should know the case, right? Just how you said, if a prosecutor goes to a jury trial, it's because that's the case he chooses or she chooses to go forward on. But you need to also educate these victims and say, look, there's some issues on this part of the case that I may not be able to prove. And if this is a realistic outcome of this case, and this is why we're telling you these things, and this is what we want to accomplish here, at least we can get some type of supervision or get some restitution or at least make you part whole or where everyone's on the same page. But whenever if you have a victim and they're not going to go ahead and sign off on something, you need to educate them as to why you're taking that position. And I don't think they're doing that.
Well, I mean, that could be. I could believe that they're not educating the victim, but I think the victim. I think that there's real problems probably with all the DA's office having to deal with these victims.
And I get what you're saying because they don't represent the victims; they represent the state of Texas. But sometimes they have to worry about the victims.
Yeah, and it wasn't that. It was much easier to practice before all these victims' rights laws came on because the prosecutor didn't have to mandatorily consult with the victim, etc. That has made it much more difficult for them. And look, you and I both know we've had assistant district attorneys tell us, look, I just can't offer probation. The victim, and I can't offer it. So to a certain extent, they're dealing within a system that they don't have 100% discretion over, even besides Mr. Skirka, right?
I agree, but I think it's because, all these positions are elected, I mean, we got to make the public, and what's going to be the main thing? You say, well, you don't care about the victim's rights, so that guy's probably not going to be on the bench that long if you have a judge who says, well, look, I don't care about victims' right, or you have a DA who says, look, I don't care about victims' right. I think genuinely they do, but there are probably other reasons why they do sometimes, because they don't want to be in the news or in the media saying that those aren't important because I'm trying to do what's right and just, or my hands are tied by the confines of the law, or I don't know.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's interesting you brought up that, people running for these offices are basically politicians, right? And you're running as a politician too, right? And you have to raise money.
Yeah, I do. I mean, all these things cost. I mean, these
know,
cards cost money. These T-shirts cost money.
Well, this show doesn't cost you any money, so you're lucky there, right?
I appreciate you giving me an avenue to come and say something.
Yeah.
But I guess on my take as it, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have a successful law practice. Besides who in town has associates as a criminal defense attorney, you got maybe Scott Ellison's office with a few of them. I can say that I have an associate. We're doing well, and he asked me, he's like, "Why do you want to do this, man?" He's like, "You're under 40. We're making money. You're doing great. We're winning all the time. Why do you want to do this?" And I told him, I said, "Matt, if I don't do it, who's gonna do it? No one's wanting to step up. If I don't do it, we have two options. We stick with what we got, or we try to change it."
Well, look, obviously I don't know your practice, and I don't know your life or whatever, but it might be an easier job. I think a lot of times people run because they think, hey, I get a paycheck, $150 a year, I get a pension, hey, it's easier. I'm going to be working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and nobody's going to know otherwise, so hey. It's a lot easier gig than burning the midnight oil, or I'm not saying that of you, but I mean I can see that, right?
No, I agree. And there are a ton of guys who probably feel that way. But like personally, me to be in the spotlight, to be the district attorney in Nueces County, I mean, I'm getting things on social media showing my tattoos, and that because I have tattoos I shouldn't be running for office, or because
a lot of people you're getting beaten up about the tattoos and this. Look, I even made a joke about it because you got a not guilty tattoo.
No, yeah,
and I made a joke about it. I says, well, I guess if this young guy wins, he's take out the knot and have the guilty, but it'll be asymmetrical. I'm just teasing you.
And I get that, but I own everything I've ever done or have, and for me, when someone says, well, you got not guilty on your chest, how can you be a DA? As a DA or the DA, you should have not guilty in the back of your mind every single time. Until I prove my case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is my burden, everyone's presumed and is not guilty. So if someone says, why you got not guilty? Well, you know what? Mark Skirka should put not guilty on his back so he can remember that. I don't know. But I mean, I'm not gonna shy away from, whatever's out there. I want people to ask me those questions and address it and say, I know you have tattoos, or I know you ride motorcycles, or I know I'm a regular person, but professionally, you can't attack my credentials. I'm very successul. And in my practice, I'm professional and I'm ethical. There's no one ever going to say, well, in court, he's trying to hide this or make up testimony. That'll never happen. If you want to attack me personally because I have tattoos or I ride a motorcycle, go ahead. But that doesn't mean I can't do my job, and I'll take it serious.
Well, people my generation, pretty much, law people aren't going to have tattoos, pretty much, So it's a little bit of a culture shock, maybe.
Right.
To them, you know what I'm saying? I'd have a hard time myself getting a tattoo. I made a joke. I said, "Well, Mark's coming on, man. I should get a henna tattoo or something." And then, I should make a joke about it. But hey, man, I know so many people get hepatitis C from tattoos. I don't know. Well, I guess that might be from streets.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, sharing them needles. Yeah, it actually, those things did occur back when it wasn't as regulated as it is now. But you still have guys doing that kind of stuff and their homes and stuff.
Do they?
Yeah.
They still have that stuff going on?
Yeah.
So there's now if you win, if you beat, now there's all this political stuff going down, I've heard. Now what I've heard, is this true or not true, that a lot of Republicans are endorsing you. They're going to vote for you because they want to get Skirka out because he's a strong Democrat and then if you run against James Garner, who's running as a Republican, then they're going to vote for James. You're hearing any of that gossip or rumor stuff?
I've heard that story, and I've heard it both ways. I've heard that Republicans are trying to get me out because they think that in the primary, in the general election, that more Hispanics are going to come out. I don't know why they say that, and that that I have a better chance of beating Gardner. And then I've heard the other way around, that they said that, well, if I beat Skirka now, then Gardner has a better chance of beating me in the general. Honestly, this is how I feel. I feel if I beat Mark Skirka in this primary election, my momentum is solid, and I don't care who tries to come after me. We're not going to lose in November. That's just the way it is, because Mr. Skirka is, a lot of people know his name, and he has support probably from both sides. And if he wasn't going through some of the things he's going now and all the bad publicity, it might be worse.
But is some of the stuff against Skirka, is some of it politically motivated?
No way.
And you don't think any of it's politically motivated by, I don't know, there's this whole thing going on over in Claiborne County with James Hubert and complaint,
Yeah.
Is it some of that going on?
I don't think so at all. I couldn't script this stuff. You have Judge Hassett, this case happened. Okay, so you had a case, right?
And I got to say, she's been I don't like saying anything bad about judges because I got to practice.
Right.
I got to practice. But I have said I found her to be a very good judge. I will say that.
Do you think this is what when people say this is mudslinging, right? Because it's politics, and politics can get dirty. That I'm learning very quickly. But I'll tell you this: these are facts. I can't make this stuff up. I'm just the lucky guy who's running against Mr. Skirka, who gets to benefit from all these things coming to light. But it's just not Hayden. It's also Overton.
Yeah, well, the Overton case was Hannah Overton's case was overturned, but that was before Skirka.
Yeah, but then he had an opportunity to remedy it afterwards, and he still didn't have.
I thought that was an abomination.
It's like,
because
we messed up. You're right. Own it. When you mess up, own it. That's what I do. When I mess up, I say, you know what? I'm sorry. I messed up. This is how we can fix it. I'll learn from my mistakes, not try to cover it up. That's what's going on. And then you had, who was the other guy? The doctor who was accused. He gave up his license, moved up north. He gets indicted on Friday, and then Monday his case gets dismissed.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even aware of that one. I know there was a state bar investigation of an assistant district attorney, Retha Cable, but a complaint was filed against her. Are you following that one?
I think I saw that article. I think it was for ex parte, because they went
ex parte allegedly before Judge Longoria.
Tried to talk to a judge without the other party there. I don't know if those are politically
motivated. Well, that's what I don't know either. But have you ever had the feeling that the prosecutors do that a lot with the judges? I think. I'm going
to be honest. I think so.
I think so.
They have a better relationship.
They're in that court all the time. They get to know him all
day.
the time, and the judge is trying to handle his court calendar expeditiously. Is this one going to go to trial? Is it not? And then sometimes these remarks could be said. It may not even be a big deal, right?
No, but I think it happens, and it might not be intentional, or maybe conflicts of other settings.
Yeah. I would say in this one though, I'm not saying it didn't happen or whatever, but my knowledge of that judge that was accused of doing ex parte communications, I don't think Judge Longoria would be likely to.
I don't think so either.
Of judges, just saying generally, and that opinion isn't worth much because obviously I don't know the whole thing. I wasn't there. I think that would be unlikely to occur because I think that particular judge is known for being hard on both sides. Sometimes pretty hard on both.
You know exactly where you stand with him.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't tried that many cases in his court, but he could be. Pretty hard on participants in both sides.
Either way, I would say if he's harsh on, he's going to be harsh on both sides. He's going to be favorable to both sides equally. It's not. I don't think he would pick a side or anything like that.
So, in terms of running for office, I guess a good thing whenever you run for office is you learn a lot about how to run. You learn about what's going on politically. You learn various things about, as we were saying, this ethnic group and the general election, all this other stuff.
It's definitely a science. Things that I had no idea existed, And
you have a campaign manager, right?
I have a few people who are helping me out.
Well, I heard complaints that Gilmore is like your. Is Gilmore?
He's actually my treasurer.
Yeah, he's your treasurer.
Right. And so that's kind of like this is just all coincidence. So he's my treasurer,
right?
And then so that case was filed, and it was his case. But I mean, here's the facts are okay. So mudslinging aside, John Gilmore, Judge Hassett, me, or Angelica Hernandez, or Terry Shams, or no one told Dr. Shakur to say that I will save my testimony for whoever I want. We didn't have any influence on that when he spoke to the district attorney's office. We didn't have any influence on him when he said that it was a contact wound and then changed his testimony. We weren't even part of that. And then when the district attorney, the assistant district attorney who was handling the case, went into Mark Skirka's office and told them that, and he said, "Don't tell them about it because it's not important." We didn't have anything to do with that. So for someone to say that this is mudslinging or some conspiracy theory, we couldn't pay for that to happen. Are we that good to where we get this ME who works for Nueces County to go in there to plant this seed, to tell Mark Skirka and Mark Skirka to decide, well, we don't have to tell it to him, or we don't need to tell it to him? Because that's what happened. He testified on the stand under oath. He knew about that information, and he didn't disclose it. I mean, I couldn't pay for that kind of events.
And Mr. Gilmore he's your treasurer, so I mean, you must have been friendly acquaintances to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, and I'll be honest with you,
yeah.
I'm friendly with every defense attorney, and I'm friendly with every prosecutor. I've always had I have a philosophy. You get love, you give love. You always want to be treated the way you treat somebody, and so I've never ever tried to be disrespectful or unkind to anyone. So I think most people like me for the most part. I mean, I may win cases that they might not be happy about, but after we're not in court, I'm very nice and cordial to you because I respect you for the job you do, and you respect me too. So I mean, okay. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, okay. Well, I just didn't know because somebody was making untoward implications that Gilmore, I don't know, I don't know what they were saying. Is he mad about the Overton case or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I've heard all
there was a
kinds
conviction.
of stuff.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah. So and that it was coincidental that he's my treasurer and he filed this about Courtney Hayden and and then Judge Hassett. I don't know. I'm telling you, there's some good stuff out there.
Well, this I've never heard so much gossip going on.
I know,
and it's extending over to Clayburgh County, wherein Mr. Hubert is on the ropes for allegedly, I guess it's true, for audio and videotaping people in the courthouse, and then Angelica Hernandez, the ex-judge over there, had filed a complaint. And everything's interrelated. Have you ever practiced over there in Clayburgh?
I've practiced a lot over there in Clayburgh, and I've heard those things, and I've gone over there, and
I didn't know we were being taped when we were in the hallway, me and talking to our clients. Did you know?
Yeah,
that?
I had no idea.
Where was that camera?
It was right there in the courtroom. It was a round one, and I had no idea that we're being videotaped. Our conversations are being could be heard. I don't know if they were or they weren't, but we didn't know that. And I think
I wondered, though. I wonder if it didn't work in my favor one time because I had a pretty big case over there, and I was telling my client in the court, I said, "Hey man, I think I don't see how they're gonna prove this case. Maybe they heard it. That's why they backed out on us. I don't know.
Yeah,
they didn't quite dismiss it, but they gave us a much lesser included offense. Maybe it could, maybe if we would have known we'd been on candid camera, we could have manipulated it a little bit better.
Leaning them some other way.
Did you follow that one? And I've asked Mr. Hubert to come on the show to discuss
I'm sure
the video and audio taping in Clayburgh. Well, I
would like to.
Well, I don't see how that's. I don't see how. My limited knowledge is I have cameras in my office, right?
Right.
But they're not audio; they're just video. It's more like a security system. But I think that I read, and I may be wrong on this, that they either have to be visible or you have to put your being recorded.
I don't know if that extends to us, but if you're the state of Texas and you're the district attorney, if you're doing that type of stuff, you may have to disclose it, especially when you're having attorney-client and an adversary process.
Yeah, attorney-client, everything's privileged.
I mean, imagine if you're playing football and you have videos of the other team and you got their plays before you're going against them. I mean, that would be all over the news, or you know what I mean? That's kind of what it sounds like they were doing over there.
Well, and like you say, it's a county property, it's attorney-client privilege, right? And I don't even know if he has the legal authority to do anything physical in a courthouse without, you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Would you have, like say Mark Skirka says, okay, I'm going to do this in a courtroom physically. I don't think he could do it.
Maybe in his office, but I think once he leaves his office, like in the common areas or in the courtroom, I don't think any judge in Nueces County would allow Mark Skirka to put a camera in their office or their chambers or their courtroom, without knowledge of it,
Okay, and what is the job of district attorney, the position that you're running for? What does it pay? Do you know?
What does it pay? I have no idea. I think like 120, 140.
Well, I think that's what I read. It pays like 140. They say the same as a district. I'm going to complain about sometimes government civil service. A lot of times they try to hide how much you actually make, right? Try to find out what a police officer in Corpus Christi, when their contract comes up, see if they ever want to print it. They don't want to print it, And I understand the district attorney's office, the judges, it's set by the state, et cetera. Right. But then they get all these stipends, et cetera, additional pay. So I think you're right. Mark Skirka pays like 140 plus maybe 20-year pension, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Those other fringe benefits.
Right. Honestly, I don't know. I've been trying to look in case I win so I can know how much I'm working with a month, but I know it's not what I'm making right now. That's for sure.
Well, I don't know. I wonder, though, like I say, if you look at a 20-year pension or whatever, I don't know when you vest and all this stuff, and then health care, you know how much health care is.
I think you have to vest after 8 years, so that means you have to be there 2 terms before you vest.
So you don't want Skirka to serve as 2 terms? I don't know. Maybe he has.
Well, he's already been in the office for 29 years. So
no. Well, you mean assistant DA and all that?
I don't know. I think as a county employee, his retirement may have vested after 8 years. Whether you're the elected district attorney or you're just a county employee.
So you won't be putting him out on the street, man? You won't be putting Mr. Mark Skirka out on the street?
I'm sure he'll retire. I don't know if he'll go maybe switch over to criminal defense. I couldn't tell you, but
that's an interesting issue that I never spoke to anyone about the show. Is the district attorney, the prosecutors that come across and then they try to defend people.
That always happens.
And some of them never make the switch very well. No. They still are prosecutorial oriented, right? And some of them acted like such jackasses when they were prosecutors, and then they want to be your buddies. I'm thinking, hey man, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
There's a federal prosecutor. There was a federal prosecutor for years here. I won't mention his name right now. And he came over and is doing criminal defense, and he's a pretty big advocate. And I was surprised because he was such a good advocate. No,
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. And he's a great lawyer.
Yeah, and
he's one of the good ones.
And but I'll tell you, this is gossip. 30 years ago, whatever, when I started practicing, I tried a case against him, and I lost. It was one of these checkpoint cases or something. He says, well, you got to come over to the right side, Mark. You got to prosecute. That's the right side. And then he comes over to the defense side, and now he thinks the prosecutor. Yeah, now he's totally opposite. So I kind of have a more, a kind of a conceptual attitude. Like everybody's got their role. He's a prosecutor. I'm a defense. As long as you're doing your job and you're not overreaching, I'm not going to be too mad at you.
I think that this whole justice system is a big machine. We all need everyone to work in conjunction and have a great relationship with everyone involved, whether it's law enforcement agencies, support like CPS or probation, or the defense attorneys with the prosecutors. When I first started, we used to hang out and go to happy hour with the prosecutors. Everyone used to work what we did at work was work, and then afterwards everyone was friends. That's not the atmosphere over there anymore. They look at criminal defense attorneys like we are the defendants, most of them, and they look at us like if we're doing something we shouldn't be doing when we're protecting their rights and calling them out when they mess up. Everyone says, oh, you get not guilty all the time. I'm not doing anything. I'm putting a case in front of 12 people in a felony or 6 people in a misdemeanor, and if they cut them loose, that's not my fault. That's the state's fault. I'm just doing my job. And so I think that everyone needs to think of this as one big, machine where every part needs to work for it to be successful. And I think with the district attorney's office not being transparent, that can affect every single part of this. It just trickles down and goes everywhere.
Well, I'll be very frank. Of course, I do criminal defense. I do 2 other areas of the law as well. But I haven't had the personal problems that I've seen that I've heard the complaints about, of course. And of course, because I got, I'll say kicked out, but whatever, from the, I'll say kicked out. I never found my way back to doing court appointments. I haven't done court appointments in many, many years. And so I haven't had the problems. Of course, I think last year I just tried 2 cases. One, they were both, the domestic violence cases. Right. What do you think of the domestic violence cases? I don't want to ask you too much conceptually, because obviously if you'd win, you have the duty to prosecute them. But the DAs have a very serious problem, because these, it's usually women, let's be frank, make these complaints about men who are engaging in physical violence or whatever, and then they renege. Then they say, oh, he's not guilty. Right. And then the prosecutor is in a situation of having to try to prosecute a case wherein the woman has changed her testimony, and their hands are a little bit tied, because if, God forbid, the woman winds up getting killed, they're going to be condemned because they didn't prosecute. Yep. I mean, I'm sure you see that every day. Every week, somebody calls my. It depends upon what year you catch me, but generally, it's at least every other week when a woman says, "Yes, I'm the one that filed the complaint.
Can you get my husband out of jail?"
Yes. And now I filed a non-prosecution affidavit, and you have to explain. Look, you're not the prosecutor. The state picked it up. That's exactly what they say. I said, look, I don't say look, lady, but it's the way you feel like saying, hey, look, lady. The state didn't pick it up. You're just a witness of that case. On the indictment, it says the state of Texas versus Mark George. It doesn't say the state of, it doesn't say you versus Mark George. So you have to explain that. So, and by the way, here's some interesting. I was doing jury duty about 3 months ago. I love that, right? I'm doing jury duty, and the prosecutor's doing the questioning of the jury. They call it voir dire. And the prosecutor's saying, well, we don't have the victim, the woman who was allegedly beaten up. We don't have any medical evidence, and we don't have any photographs of any bruises on the woman. But we want you to find the defendant guilty. And so they're asking me if I could do that. I said, well, I think it'd be very unlikely. I don't want to convince the jurors otherwise when we're in the decision. I don't want to taint the panel, but I got to be frank. You're asking the question. No, I think it'd be very unlikely without the woman there saying she was beat up, without any medical evidence that she was substantially harmed or any photographs. I kind of doubt that. But I heard the prosecutor got it guilty, and I heard that the guy got a big sentence because he'd done it twice before. So that might be an issue wherein some of these questionable cases you could get guilty convictions.
And that's a hot topic right now. At least I know Mr. Skirka is making that like one of his big things that he's been pushing for in domestic violence. But realistically, result-wise, I mean, you can say you have these programs of the Victims 101, where they make these victims of crimes actually take time or miss work to go tell them about their rights or other alternatives that they can do, and then not go through with their wishes. They have the BIP program. I mean, they have all kinds of programs, but they don't work. Nothing is working. That's why you still have the women's shelter. Has the DA's office closed the women's shelter down? No. Why? Because it's not working, I mean, you're always going to have some of these problems, but you got to address how do you make it better. Convictions aren't always going to make things better or fix the problems, but,
Well, but the media, the Corpus Christi Caller Times, for example, which, I mean, I have a low opinion of, they're going to beat the drums. There's especially on the right wing, they're going to beat the drums that they could solve crimes by convicting people of crimes, by prosecuting them of crimes, and that's going to have a social impact and prevent people from doing it. I don't see that as happening.
I think it's completely opposite.
I mean,
most of the time you got a guy who's accused of hurting his wife or girlfriend, and so then he gets removed from the home. And then he comes back, right, the next day. And so he's mad because he can't be around or he's on probation. What do you think she's going to call the cops next time? Probably not, because they didn't follow her wishes. Nothing got better. I mean, so a lot of time that I think that I see is that some of these victims, they're not going to call the officers because he got a conviction. Now he can't work. He's upset. He's on probation. I mean, it's a difficult situation.
Oh, yeah, and it's a very difficult situation. Well, he can't see his 5 kids. He can't come home. We can't afford to have 2 households. We hear all this, right?
These are real problems.
Real problems. So and of course those are problems you would have to deal with.
But here's the deal, I think if you get the education for those people where say, look, this is a behavior that you should not engage in. Because most of the time, so you get a case, right? And you know this, someone gets arrested, they get out of jail for, like, let's say, assault, family violence, misdemeanor one. Where do they go? They go right back to the house. And when does the state of Texas file the case? When does the district attorney file that case? A year later almost, sometimes 6 months later. So they're back in the home, either engaging in the same behavior for 6 months because they're not being held responsible. They don't have a court date. They don't have anything. So not being efficient hurts the household where these problems occur. And that, I think, trickles down to every aspect, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's DWI, these guys who get stopped drinking and driving. Their case didn't go in front of a court for a year, so what do you think they're doing? Out there boozing probably again, and driving because they haven't been held accountable. So we can make it a priority and start, within the 30 days, get these guys some education. Maybe they don't get a conviction, but they got that DWI education, and now they know, all right, I can go to prison for 3 DWIs? Oh, my God, Some people don't even know that. Your third DWI.
I try to tell my clients the first or second DWI, look, your third one's, I'm not laughing, but I mean, your third one's a felony, man.
Yeah, you're going away. You can go away or at least get a 9-month treatment program. So I got a ton of guys, you get one when you're in your 20s. No big deal. You don't get a lawyer. You plead guilty. You get one in your 30s.
Right.
No big deal. You get it, no consequence. And now you're a grandpa, and now you're getting your third one, and you're like, I'm going to prison over this? Yeah, because you didn't, handle it properly. You didn't fix it the first time.
Well, but the first time they may have been guilty anyway. But I mean,
Probably.
It's possible. It's possible they were.
Yeah.
They were innocent, of course. And like you're saying, they think it's no big deal. It's just a slap on the wrist. And I'll tell you some war stories. When I started practicing, all this stuff wasn't on databases, computer databases. People lie to me all the time. I never had a prior DWI, and sometimes the state would catch it, sometimes they wouldn't because it's all like a manual system. Now you get a DWI. It is for life, man. It is like tyranny.
20 years ago,
Yeah, it is like tyranny, and you could be, like let's say you're running for politics. You say, I'm going to run for, and then that comes up, man. Now
I have a DWI when I was 19 years old.
Is that right?
Yeah, in Claiborne County, Kingsville. So
I mean, it depends upon how dirty it is and how big your enemies are. But I
got my mugshot in my office.
I got. Do you have your mugshot?
Yeah.
I got a JP found me in contempt. I think his name was I don't know and he put me in jail. JP and Sinton, and so I got a mugshot over there for that. I never went and picked it up. I meant to do a some sort of an expunction or something.
Right.
But, because I don't know. See, I don't know. It had to be a criminal arrest because he put me in the jail over there. But that was been my limited experience. So
that's how I actually became a lawyer. Because of that experience right there. Is
that right?
Yeah, I was 19 and.
Well, I got to tell you something. I shouldn't have interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think I don't particularly like the way Americans are treated who are accused of a DWI. I don't particularly like the fact that they'll force you down, strap you down, and do a blood test. I don't really approve of that. I mean, even these tests. I look at these tests all the time where a police officer tells someone, "Oh, do this. Stand on one toe. Do this." And you know what I'm thinking to myself? Hey, man,
I can't do that.
Blank you. I if they stop me, I'd say I don't know that I'd be as tolerant as these people are. So I'm obviously very careful in terms of that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but
I don't do that.
But that's a conceptual issue. It has nothing to do with your job as district attorney. But I wonder if they're not even overreaching on the DWIs. Like I said, I had a client of mine recently, and you've heard it before. They said, "Look, if you don't do the blood test, we're going to strap you down." Is that like a country? I mean,
it happens.
I mean,
that's what's going on.
I mean, I think that's atrocious, but it is going on. And of course, as a DA, you're going to be working with a lot of police officers and all that. And what would you say to people? And I haven't really heard this of you, but
right.
I mean, they'd say, "Well, look, how's he going to all of a sudden, with his not guilty tattoo and his attitude, how's he going to really want to prosecute anybody? His attitude is going to be." Everybody's innocent. Let everybody go on marijuana.
Right. Honestly, marijuana I think is a topic where there's a meeting on Tuesday where the city is considering only ticket only ordinance wherever they on 4 ounces or less. Which I think so here like at least that real quick. You got individuals who, officers who are out. They patrol 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever their patrol is. You got a guy smoking a joint at A&M or down here at the beach or something. What do? Haul him in. Takes him a good 2 hours to take him in, write him up, and then get back on the street, right? Well, what's he not doing? He's not answering the violent calls. He's not out there probably deterring, the real crime. So, if you ask any officer, I mean, they do not like to arrest people for marijuana. They would rather, I'm sure most of them would rather write a citation and be done with it. But, here's my situation. Regarding being soft on crime, I'm not going to be soft on crime, I'm not an officer, a law enforcement. I'm not CCPD. I'm not a cop. I'm not a detective. But if you're brought in front of me, I'm going to hold you accountable. So if you're doing something that you get arrested for, we're going to hold you accountable, whether it's violent crime or even a non-violent crime. I mean, that's just what we have to do. That's my job. Just the way I take my job serious. If to defend people accused of crimes, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to be successful whether I'm on this side or the other side, but ethically and professionally. And if it exists, I promise you, I'm giving it to you no matter what.
Well, what I'd wondered is, and I mentioned this to some people, I said, well, like, are the young defense attorneys, are they using the Michael Morton Act ethically, or are they using it like a club against the prosecutors? That was what my concern is because, like I said, what is evidence and what isn't? And you may not know this, but in Nueces County for 30 years they've had open file policy. Right. Generally. You used to go to some of these other counties, they wouldn't want to give you the police report.
Yeah, and you'd have to make your own copies or write stuff down.
Yeah, I mean, they had all kinds of cons like that going on. There was in one of these, they had a guy called Wiley Cheatham. He wouldn't give you nothing. You'd go to the court and get a court order, he still wouldn't. And they'd beat you to death by going back and forth to that town, for all these discovery disputes and that. So I can't say that... because I think Skirka was DA before the Michael Morton Act, and he did have an open file policy, and probably the issues regarding these issues didn't come up that often, did they? Did you ever have just speaking practically, did you ever really have a problem with them personally secreting evidence before the passing of the Michael Morton Act?
I don't really think so.
I don't think I did. I don't think.
But the only way now that
I had some ethical issues.
Now that you have this act, though, you have to ask how do you address it. And if I would win, I would have an open file policy, but a completely different one. You can see my notes. There's no work product. Now, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
As a district attorney, if I'm gonna win, I'm gonna have a case. I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna beat you, and I'm gonna tell you these are the reasons why I'm gonna beat you. So that way, exactly. I'm not hiding anything. If you want work product, look at my notes. You're gonna know every single thing because I have nothing to hide.
But I mean, if you get in, sometimes some strange things could occur politically behind the scenes. Years ago, I had a big case, and they assigned an assistant DA. Mark Skirk was, and they gave it a lot of publicity, and supposedly that one prosecutor was going to get they were supposed to get a certain conviction, and then he was going to be able to run for judge. And sometimes they manipulate stuff politically behind the scenes. And I don't know, I mean, in other words, even these bigger cases, the prosecutors, I'm not saying Mark Skirker really does this, but I this is the case that's getting publicity. This is the case that's on 60 Minutes.
Right.
You got to get the conviction or you'll look bad. I think, and these people got to run for office. I think there's like issues like that going on all the time.
I mean, Mark. I could see that, but I mean, at the end of the day, I could say, and this is why I don't take down my Facebook page. This is why I still will drink beer at the Trade Center whenever I want to, not drink and drive. But I'm not for sale from nobody, and I don't care who contributes to my campaign or who doesn't. I'm going to do what I think's right, and I'm going to stay true to my heart, and that's the bottom line. And so sometimes you're going to have these other things pulling the strings. I know exactly what you're talking about when,
it happens.
It does happen.
It happens. I mean, this case is getting publicity, and you're trying to...
You need a conviction to look hard on this crime or that crime.
Yeah, that's what they do all that stuff, and then I've had cases, and I've seen other attorneys do it too. You say, well, you want to keep the publicity down. Because if you keep the publicity down, there's not going to be this witch hunt for your client to be convicted. You don't want the publicity up. I mean, they say the publicity will help your career and this and that. I don't know if I ever found that to be the case, but they say that. But I mean, you'd pretty ethically challenge if you want a bunch of publicity on your case just for your own
political gain
or for your own career instead of for the right reasons. So let me see here. Corpus Christi prosecutors cheat to win, alleges trial judge. That was the conclusion of Nanette Hassett in her order reversing Messias' murder conviction. The court concludes that the intentional suppression of evidence and lack of timely disclosure of exculpatory mitigating impeachment evidence described herein constitutes prosecutorial misconduct and undermines the confidence of the public in the judicial system. And the outcome of this trial specifically, wrote court reporter Krista Toralva. You're familiar with that case, right?
Finding of fact, not an accusation, not something I made up. A finding of fact by a district judge. That's what you're reading.
And you attempt to, and you believe that you're going to be successful in trying to get any sort of ethical problems out of the office of district attorney.
If I give you everything, you can't come back and say I was hiding anything, right? I mean, it's that simple. If it exists, you give it to them. That's it. You can't get in trouble.
And when's the election, sir?
All right, so we got early voting, February 16th through the 26th. That's early voting, and then you have the actual March 1st is the day to vote, and it'll be done. I mean, we ain't got much time. This thing's gonna be over.
I gotta get this show on. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for watching. Bye bye.